Mackenzie.
Yes, Lemar.
I got a question for you.
¿Qué pasa?
Do you know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in France?
No, what?
Royale with cheese. Because fuck the metric system, that's why.
Fuck the metric system. Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I am Mackenzie.
My name's Lemar.
And we are drinking and watching things today. And thank you for coming back. I'm going to say this probably every time. Because if you're back.
Yeah, or if you're listening for the first time.
Or if you're listening for the first time, welcome. We are so happy to have you here. We love all your feedback and your comments that we've been getting. Can we quit it with the hate mail for Lemar, though? It's still coming.
It's getting very, I'm sleeping with one eye open at this point.
Maybe it's like a fandom stalker thing really deep down, you know? Who knows?
I've always wanted a stalker, so we'll see. I was going to, I asked you that question about the quarter pounder. Do you want to know what my backup question for the warm-up was going to be?
Oh, God, what?
Does he look like a bitch? That was my second option. So,
I'm glad you went with the Royale with cheese. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I think it played better.
Yeah.
But, so in case you couldn't tell, we're going to be continuing on our part 2-ish, kind of. We don't, they're not really parts at this point, but our Tarantino comparison conversations.
That's not what it's called. What's it called?
I don't want to butcher it.
Tarantino-vember.
Tarantino-vember.
Push the words together.
Tarantino-vember. You're right. Tarantino-vember. This is our second outing of this. Mm-hmm. As a reminder, this was originally born of a conversation about Inglourious Basterds versus Pulp Fiction,
mm-hmm.
sort of versus sort of not. Just more like how are they different and what made them successful respectively. And we couldn't get it all in one episode is what it came down to. Yeah. So we split it up, and then now we got a whole month for you.
Yeah. So if you haven't gone and listened to last week, we discussed Inglourious Basterds in detail. It's pretty cool. It gives us a little more time. We want to keep these, 60 minutes-ish for y'all to get through. So it's good that we split it up, and now you can listen to more information about different movies.
Yeah, I mean, we do go on, so just let us know if you can't hang. We're happy to adjust. I had somebody tell me outright, they were like, I don't have the attention span for that. I was like,
that sounds like a personal problem. The hell with that. Okay.
I'm not going to name names, Jose, but I feel like you could make a little bit more of an effort.
This is definitely one of those situations where we say, yes, give us feedback, but if it's negative, we're going to be take it very personal.
But by the way, we do not agree with you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Do you love us? Yes? Then your feedback is welcome.
Sweet.
So what we're gonna come in and talk about some Pulp Fiction here again in just a second. But all that to say, what are we drinking?
Well, it's the same day that we recorded the last episode, so we are unfortunately still drinking champagne.
Listen, this shit is delicious, first of all.
It is, but we realized halfway into last episode how much of a mistake this was, because we were just each every 5 minutes turning away from the mic to burp.
We're like, oh God.
So for your sake, we are editing those out.
You're welcome.
Unless, if you want to give us the feedback that you would appreciate the burps, maybe there's an untapped, fetish that we're not...
Listen, we're going to talk about fetishes today, so maybe that's one of them. Let us know if that's yours, in which case Lemar will burp into the mic for you, because I will not.
I've done worse things for less money, so, yeah.
I used to burp a lot when I was a kid. I got my quote out. You know what I mean? I can't do it in public anymore. It's not safe.
It's frowned upon as an adult. It's sad, but... So, Pulp... MFN Fiction, classic Tarantino film from 1994.
Yeah.
And Academy Award winning. Lots of nominations.
Quick reminder, if you haven't seen these things, please watch them. I'm going to give you a quick plot summary.
Let's hear it.
And then we're going to dig in. So just as again, hopefully you've seen this, and hopefully multiple times, because it's a great flick. So quick refresher course. Vincent Vega, played by John Travolta, and Jules Winfield, Samuel L. Jackson, are hitmen with a penchant for philosophical discussions. In this ultra-hip, multi-strand crime movie, their storyline is interwoven with those of their boss, gangster Marcellus Wallace, played by the legendary Ving Rhames, his actress wife, Mia Uma Thurman, struggling boxer Butch Coolidge, played by Bruce Willis, master fixer Winston Wolfe, Harvey Keitel, and a nervous pair of armed robbers, Pumpkin, Tim Roth, and Honey Bunny by Amanda Plummer. So we got a mix of folks. First of
Yeah.
all, incredible cast as per usual.
Yes.
As per usual.
And again, it's those multiple threaded storylines. We talked about this last week, aka an hour ago. And this one is a little more, I guess I would call it condensed, where the overlap between the stories makes a little more sense, I think, in this one. Whereas in Glorious, it's like two disconnected things that happen to climax at once. Whereas in this one, it's, three distinct storylines that have sort of overlaps with the characters, and you could follow the threads of like when different things happen. It also takes place chronologically, occasionally out of order, which is also kind of interesting. But yeah, so you've got the opening with Honey Bunny and Pumpkin, who are never given proper names, I realized in the credits, but props to them for they're memorable. So you open up with that, and then you get into Jules and Vincent doing their thing for Marcellus. Then we jump into Vince taking Mia out for a night on the town that they will not soon forget. You come back to this random story with Butch and his dealings with Marcellus. So you get a little hint of it in the beginning, and then we get his story. And then eventually we jump back to Vince and Jules and them sort of running into Honey Bunny and Pumpkin. And again, like Tarantino's so good at that. It brings everything back to where we started at the beginning of the film, which is really cool to see.
And I think he does it really well, but this is his second movie. You know what I mean? Like, he does it really well already. You know, I think that's the thing that's the standout for this movie on a rewatch, maybe even on a first watch. Maybe you don't notice it as much on the first watch, but definitely on a rewatch when you know that it's going to be kind of disjointed and you're paying more attention to it. You're like, holy shit, it does. It just comes back around in this great way. Yeah. And these things, interwoven is exactly the right word, I think. They just interweave appropriately at the right time, and they come back at the right time where you want this storyline, wrapped up. You want this one wrapped up. It all happens, it feels like, at the right time.
Yeah, this, I mentioned it won an Academy Award, and it was for Best Screenplay. And the balls to do this on the second film you're directing, we're not sure what our fourth Tarantino-vember film will be. It could be Reservoir Dogs. Let us know if you want us to do that one. Yeah. But just to say a little bit about it, that movie is so contained. Most of it takes place in one warehouse, and they sort of cut away to this other action. This, to go from that to these sprawling storylines and having to do all this interconnectedness, just there's a reason this won Best Screenplay at the Oscars that year.
100%. I mean, if you look at the structure, it's very planned. It's very, there are really like 7 major parts. There's certain chapters, but there's 7 major parts because you have these preludes and then you have these chapters. And it's this setup is even planned really well and really appropriately. And yeah, to your point, the balls to do this on your second time out and really have this disjointed story, and have it tell the right story. I think the other thing about the screenplay writing, one, I think it was absolutely deserving. I looked, I can't remember, but there was it was against like 4 Weddings and a Funeral and Red and a couple other things, which are good films for sure. But I think the writing is a standout for Pulp Fiction over those, and it makes so much sense that it won. But the other standout for me too is that he wrote a lot of these characters for the people playing them.
Yeah.
So like
he had folks in mind.
He had people in mind. Exactly. He had Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer in mind. He had Samuel L. Jackson in mind. He had he had Uma Thurman in mind. He had to convince Uma Thurman to do it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was not on board, and I think the story is that he like called her and read her the whole thing.
Like a bedtime story?
Yeah, like a bedtime story. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. He's like, let me read you to sleep, honey. Also, you're going to be barefoot the whole time. I hope you don't mind.
So then Jules says, English, motherfucker, do you speak it? It's like in a very calm, soothing.
Very calming. Yeah, so he convinces her to do it. And that's how, she turned it down initially, and then he convinced her by reading it to her. So again, the screenplay standing alone is what I'm saying. Like the power of the writing, how well it is written, stood out, convinced people to do it.
So let's transition, because you just gave us a pretty seamless transition. Let's talk about the cast a little bit, because you're saying he had specific folks in mind for this, which I wasn't aware of. Let's start with, I guess, at the beginning, Honey Bunny and Pumpkin.
They were written for both of them.
He's a big Tim Roth guy. Tim Roth's been in a handful. He was just in Hateful Eight a few years back. I don't know that he was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but he's been in a handful. He's been in probably about half of the Tarantino movies at this point.
Yeah, I don't think he was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but yeah, he was in Hateful Eight, and he, of course, makes a splash there. So, yeah, no, he's and this is, of course, we have to think about Tim Roth again. We pointed this out in the prior episode as well. You got to think about it in the context of the time and whether or not they were very well known here. He wasn't super well known at this time, to my knowledge. I mean, he hadn't been in a lot of things yet. He hadn't done Hulk yet. You know what I mean? Like,
This was before the TV show where he can read animal minds. I've never watched it, but I know he solves mysteries or something. So way before that.
Animal Minds.
I assume that's what it's about.
Do you know what that made me think of? That made me think of Forgetting Sarah Marshall, where at the end she's like about to do a new show, and it's literally she's an
okay,
animal
maybe that's
psychic.
because we did just rewatch Forgetting Sarah Marshall like 2 months ago, so maybe that's where I'm
I
pulling
think that's
it
what you're thinking of, because I'm like, he did what now? I'm gonna have to give that a go. But no, yeah, that's he's a big fan of Tim Roth, nevertheless.
Okay, and I mean, they make an impression for us. You know, we see them in the very beginning. They open the film. They only have about a 5-6 minute little dialogue heavy scene, but it's fascinating to listen to. I love the dynamic between the two. They got kind of a Bonnie and Clyde
for sure
vibe of they are clearly, you know, maybe not legally insane, but I think that Honey Bunny is a little more unhinged. She goes a little more bonkers and flips a switch pretty quickly. But yeah, they're definitely a Bonnie and Clyde type couple.
Yeah, they definitely are a little edgy, little unhinged. Like, she is that character type. Like, she plays that type. Amanda Plummer, she is always this little unhinged person. She was like the same character in the Hunger Games, for example, just like, you know, Switch all the time. And so I think with her, she read to me, of the two of them, more unhinged, and you were more nervous about what she was going to do.
Yes.
Kind of throughout, you know. But I don't think it's super obvious right away that they're straight up criminals, right? Like, you don't, you're
like, why are we
into the they're about to pull some shit, you know?
Yep. Yeah, like, why are we focused on these two people having coffee at a diner, and they're sort of walking through, and then they sort of lead you into, as you said, about, yeah, we're robbing places, but why don't we just rob this place? And obviously that factors in later in the story.
And I just love that he's like, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna do these kinds of things anymore. You know, he's like talking about how reformed he's gonna be, but this is the reformed version, is robbing diners. Like, that's the better version.
It's the safer version.
It's the safer version at the very least. I was like, cool, I'm glad you're making so much progress,
it's
buddy.
pure self-preservation, not self-improvement, I would say.
Yeah.
How about when we jump over to Jules and Vincent? So we've got, you know, the incomparable Samuel L. Jackson. Not the first time that he said the F word in a movie, but definitely, I think, set the trend for how many times he's allowed to say the F word in future films.
265 times in this movie.
Really?
In case you were curious.
All the characters, or just Samuel L. Jackson?
All of them.
I would believe either one. I would believe
either one, yes. All of them. In this movie, 265 times the word fuck. And I have never related more. I am with it. The F word is one of the best words. I hate to quote a Dane Cook reference, because, you know, he's interesting. But he has a skit about the fuh and the and the k. It's just so satisfying. It really is. It really is.
That hard K. Okay. So how about anything else to go off of with Samuel L. Jackson in this film? I think he's arguably the most memorable character in the flick, I would say.
I mean, he gets that speech, you know what I mean? Which we can get into in a second, because that warrants its own discussion. But yeah, no, it was written for him. But fun factoid on that as well, he almost lost the gig.
What did he do?
Well, he didn't do anything. It was what someone else did. The guy who plays Paul, whose name is also Paul, funnily enough, auditioned for the role. And don't ask me why they were auditioning for the role that was cast. I don't know.
Right.
But they were auditioning the role. He did an audition and apparently had an incredible audition. And Tarantino almost gave it to him. And Samuel L. Jackson heard about this, flew to L.A., and did another audition to secure the role.
I would be pissed too.
I would be pissed too. But can you imagine? Did he just bust the door open and like, look, motherfucker, this is my job?
I'm like, if you said Sam Jackson was flying across the country because he wanted to talk to me, I'd be terrified.
I'd be terrified.
How about John Travolta as Vincent? Sort of a career rebirth here before it sort of submerged again.
Yeah,
because John Travolta might have more peaks and valleys than anyone in Hollywood.
And everybody does say that about this role for him, and it makes perfect sense because it's incredible. You know, that this really was, a revamp of his career, make people remember him, pay attention to him. Also, it was very different, I think, than a lot of things that he had done. It wasn't a Grease, it wasn't a Saturday Night Fever. He is dancing in this one, but not in the same way, obviously. You can't have John Travolta in a movie and not make him dance. But it's not what it's about, you know? He's this very different character, and he's a really, I don't know, it seems counterintuitive to say, but like kind of a mellow guy, like a chill guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a hitman, so chill for a hitman, I
Yes.
guess is maybe the way to say it.
So if you weren't familiar with why people say it's a career rebirth, like I'm sure a lot of people hear that, and now you watch Pulp Fiction and you're just like, oh, John Travolta's great and that, blah, blah, blah. If you're my age, and this came out in 1994, for the record, John Travolta had just got done his third Look Who's Talking movie. That's where his career was at. So if you were my age and you were a child watching those films, Pulp Fiction came out like a year after the third Look Who's Talking film.
Yeah.
So yes, revitalized his career for the better part of a decade. Adele Dazeem happened at some point in there, and now he's kind of back to being a little bit infamous. But yeah, he's getting crazier and crazier.
But again, he's had more valleys since, but this is a gem. You know, this is a gem and has been a gem, and it's fun to watch him. He's a fun character in this one. He's an intriguing one, and you know, again, hopefully you've seen it. No spoilers, yada yada. But like, it's really sad for me when he gets taken out.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
that was as far as the chronology of the film. That's the thing that I find interesting is they have you build up sort of this compassion for the guy in the first story segment, you know, with him and Sam Jack. Then he goes in the second story segment, takes out Uma Thurman, or
Right.
Mia, saves her life. You know, granted, it's his fault that this
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah.
but you know, you spend all this time with him only for him to be sort of like mindlessly shot as a
Right.
bit character in the third story, and then he comes back in the final story again because it's out of order. And it's like, you know that his story doesn't end well, and you get to see Sam Jackson, you know, spoiler, walking away from the business, Jules, and
Yeah.
Vincent questioning it of like, no, I'm not going to quit working for Marcellus. And we know that that's how he ends up dying.
Yeah, and it's such a sad reality of he should have walked away from it. He doubled down. He even had this example right in front of him of why he should,
Right.
and that he could, and
Yes.
he doesn't, and he dies, and it's so sad. But he's an incredible character throughout.
Yeah.
And their pairing. They're such an interesting pairing. Again, I think the summary is great. Like they have these philosophical discussions,
Right.
that are so entertaining and
Yeah.
interesting and pretty intellectual.
So, spinning off of that, would you throw somebody off a balcony for massaging your lover's feet? Or is that too much for you? I'm sorry, you were taking a sip when I said that.
I almost spit out my champagne when you asked me that.
You know, philosophical conversations.
Philosophical,
Would you
deep
throw someone
conversations.
off a balcony for massaging Skylar's feet? Is my question.
No, because actually I would like to deputize that job to somebody. I don't like feet. I'm not into
Okay,
feet.
okay.
Please do that job for me. And I don't want to do it. So no, I would not throw anybody off a balcony. You know, yeah, it'd have to be a lot worse than that.
Okay,
I feel like that is
okay.
that is an extreme response. What about you?
I don't think I would. Again, not a Bigfoot person,
Yeah.
so that seems excessive.
Which
you
I
know.
feel a little bit hypocritical because I love a foot massage.
Yeah.
Like, I will take one. But
you're not giving- I'm not touching someone
I'm not
else's
gonna give you
feet.
one.
Yeah.
I'm not going to touch your feet.
Yeah.
No.
There's a running thing throughout this movie of all three times that Vince goes to the bathroom, something bad happens. And again, I'm pulling some of this stuff. You know, obviously I Googled some little fun facts and
Yeah.
whatnot. Credit to What Culture on a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today. I feel like they should be paying us for advertising. But
Honestly.
they mention, you know, 3 times Vince goes to the bathroom and 3 times things happen that are terrible. So he goes during the diner scene, comes back, and he's being held at gunpoint, basically, or Jules is being held at gunpoint. The second time is when he goes and Mia overdoses on the drugs that are in his pocket. And then the third time when he's in Bruce Willis's bathroom. I gotta decide either character names or actor names. So he's in Butch's bathroom, and he
yeah.
gets killed there. So it's like 3 times. Just don't go to the bathroom, Vince.
Yeah, man. You know, I hadn't thought about that. So thank you, What Culture. Again, sponsor us. But no, thank you for pointing that out because I hadn't thought about that. But that is so true. And again, a testament for the umpteenth time to Tarantino's writing and his planning.
Yeah.
And you know that was intentional. And it's always, I think, the other thing that jumps out at those for me is like he's in there killing time
Yeah.
in all of those situations.
Yeah.
He's reading a book.
Yeah.
He's like trying to decide whether or not to hit on, you know, Mia, and he's
Telling himself he's going to go
I'm
home
gonna
and
go
jerk
home.
off.
I'm gonna go home. I'm not gonna hook up with her. I'm not gonna hook up with her.
You're going to jerk off and you're going to be all right.
And you're gonna jerk off and you're gonna be all right. It's a great night. You're gonna be fine. You know, I
Yeah.
love the little pep talk there. It's great.
That's
It's
all you're
hilarious.
going to do.
That's all you're gonna do.
I told Mackenzie before we started recording, I was like, there is a risk that this entire 60 minutes is just going to devolve into us quoting the film,
Yeah.
and I'm not sorry to say that it's happening a little bit. That's fine.
I was all here. I was all for it. I don't know why we need to be upset. But yeah, it was incredible to see his little pep talk to himself. That was one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, I saw someone mentioned that constipation is apparently a symptom of heroin addicts, so maybe that's why he spends so much time in the bathroom. Who knows?
God. Is that from what culture too?
It might have been the same article, or it might have been something else on Google. I'm just gonna. Can I just give credit to Google, and that covers everything, or like
Yes,
Wikipedia?
at Google.
Okay. Let's move to, because we mentioned Butch briefly. So the Bruce Willis character Butch, the boxer who's supposed to throw a fight, and he does not. Spoiler. What are your thoughts on Bruce Willis in this role?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Well, some of it background thoughts. Bruce Willis had actually had a few flops at this point, so this was also a little bit of a resurgence for him, and it was a really good role for him. Same thing as John Travolta. It was a great role for him. Yeah. He did a good job, and it was kind of a revitalization for him too. So this movie did people a lot of favors. First of all, but also I'm really, as you watch his story, I'm not surprised at the things that he chooses to do, but it feels stupid. It feels stupid while it's happening. You're like, here's a super powerful gangster that you're going up against. And this feels like a really dumb idea. And you're being really cocky about it and naive about it. And so I don't get me wrong. I'm not into boxing for this very reason. It is fixed. It's very annoying. I don't like it. So I hate that concept to begin with. It's not like I want him to throw a fight. I love a guy who's not going to throw a fight, but I also was like, this feels dangerous.
Yeah, the Bruce Willis, like the Butch character, is maybe it's just all Tarantino. We talked about Inglourious and how the bastards, we love them throughout the film, but they're doing terrible things, and they edited scenes out that were even more controversial. And in this, Tarantino has this knack for giving you characters who are flawed and doing bad things, but somehow you're still rooting for them to succeed and win. And Butch in this, credit to Janelle, we were watching it and she called out that he's kind of got like CTE, like the post-concussion from being a boxer, because he flips that angry switch. He throws the TV and then suddenly he's like, it's not your fault. Like he just chills right back out again. And it's like, that's a scary guy. Like that is what I would imagine.
He's an Aaron Hernandez. It's really creepy.
Yeah, professional boxer who like gets hit in the head for a living. And he plays that to perfection, but it's like we're rooting for him. It's very strange.
You are, and it's such an interesting lens. Actually, I love that, Janelle. Thank you. To consider that side of it. You think it's just that he's triggered by this is a really important memento to him. Yeah. Which for all the reasons it's totally valid, but it does feel extreme. It feels like a very intense response. You could be upset. You could be angry even. But yeah, it's an extreme response. But he plays it very well, yeah.
Agreed. How about we've got his girlfriend Fabian, played by Maria de Medeiros. Anything to say about her in this role?
She is not my fave.
Really? What don't you like?
It's not... I mean, she's played very well.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that
The
slightly.
character.
The character is played by this actress very well. The character itself, I don't love... She's really naive and she needs taking care of, and she just kind of follows him and does what he wants, and he's doing this very dangerous thing. She seems to be vaguely aware of the danger. She even asks at one point, are we in danger? And I literally said out loud, are you a fucking idiot?
If they find us, they'll kill us. Yes,
ma'am.
We just scammed the biggest mob boss in the city.
Let's do some running, bitch. Like I don't. She is so naive, and I don't do well with people being stupid in moments like that feel obvious to me. Is all.
That's fair. I think that their relationship is one of the more interesting dynamics, because it does feel like they are genuinely in love.
100%, yeah.
And I'm just like, how did these people meet? Like, where did they run into each other?
Yeah,
and
let's have a side story about that.
Yeah, prequel.
I mean, yeah, a little prequel there, because they seem really genuine. They seem really romantic, and it's this sincere, kind of cute side to him too. Yeah. That you, of course, as a boxer, to your point, and with his anger issues and whatever else, and the shit that he's pulling, you're like, I don't expect this out of this guy. Yeah. And here he is, really kind of just in love with her and charmed by her, and she doesn't seem like anything special. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean she's somebody who's sweet and kind and kind of, again, not a huge standout, but he is in love with her. And that, I think, is the thing that stands out about it the most.
Would she be more special if she had a pot belly?
Yes,
Okay,
100%.
yeah,
She said it herself.
Yeah, just rock the cropped
Those pot
top.
bellies.
Yeah.
That was the most disgusting conversation.
Really? That was the most disgusting?
Well, no, it wasn't.
Not the watch in the ass?
No, obviously not the most, but I was like, who is sitting here? Only skinny women are like, can I have a pot belly, please? There is not, I don't know a single normal average size woman. I'm not fat. I would never ask for a pot belly. I'm an average size person. This is the weirdest maybe is the better word. That is the weirdest conversation I've observed.
That's wonderful. I thought one of the funny little call outs that I wrote down, and this was my own actually, was Maria de Medeiros, the actress here. She speaks 6 different languages.
What?
And I think this also ties into like Inglorious, how that had such a diverse cast from the actors who had been acting for decades in other countries, mostly Europe. And then, yes, I believe she was born in, I want to say Portugal, but did acting in France. So she speaks 6 different languages, but at some point in this, she says, I don't speak Spanish. She definitely does speak Spanish. And then when he's training her on like, where's the shoe store? Like, and she has to fake not knowing Spanish. I thought that was kind of cute.
That is cute. Also, I love, can we just take a moment to be like, you were like, this is actually mine. I know a thing. I did a thing and I know a thing. We're very proud of you, Lemar.
Thank you. That's the only thing.
Congratulations.
After 5 episodes of this podcast, I've come up with an original thought.
I didn't Google it. I am so proud. Congratulations.
We've got Marcellus Wallace, Ving Rhames.
Fucking Rhames.
And we've got to remember that kids nowadays will be like, oh, that's the Arby's meats guy. But no, this is like, we forget this was one of the baddest motherfuckers in Hollywood a couple decades ago. So now you know him as like the Mission Impossible tech dude and Arby's. But he's a badass in this. He's a scary guy.
That makes me really sad. That made me really sad.
I don't think he's sad about it. He's probably getting a killer paycheck every month. So
I know, but not, that people know him from that. That makes my heart a little sad.
That's fair. How about anything to say about Marcellus the character?
Well, I love that you. I don't know about you. Even on the first watch, I don't even know when that was, to be honest. But the first time that I watched it, I knew it was him, and I knew it was Ving Rhames. But you don't see him for so long, and it makes him really interesting and intriguing, and he's kind of the man behind the curtain. And you hear a lot of references to him. You hear these legends, obviously, about these horrible things that he's done. He's obviously a scary guy. And the first time you really see him, he's very unassuming. Yeah. He doesn't seem particularly threatening in these moments. So it's interesting that that's, you kind of similar to Inglourious Basterds, where you're talking about the bear Jew.
Yeah.
You see him coming out of this tunnel and you expect this big ass monster, and it's really just like a normal dude.
And later in the movie, you see him walking across the street with a box of donuts.
And then later you see
like
him walking around with the pink box of fucking
him?
donuts. And let's talk about the pink boxes. Where do you get the pink boxes? Anyway, you see him walking across the road with this pink box of donuts, and he's just like a normal fucking guy. Yeah. But he has been this legend, this boogeyman in your mind for the whole movie.
Yep. How about his wife Mia, played by Uma Thurman?
What a weird matchup, right? Like
again, where did they meet?
I know, yet another prequel. Too bad Tarantino's only going to make 10 movies, 11. But we need a prequel for sure to understand that. But I just think that she's a really interesting character. She does not fit, to me, what you would expect for a gangster mob guy's wife, who...
In what way?
Physicality, personality, motivations. The only thing I think that seems similar is that she's lonely and bored. And that's why this guy is hanging out with her. And again, very mob dynamics, gangster dynamics of you hang out who I let you hang out with, and that's it. And so you understand why this is happening, but you still, at least for me, I didn't really think that of her. She seems to be a unique enough individual and enough of an individual to not be just kind of beholden to her master, so to speak, and do whatever he says and hang out with whoever he says and some of that kind of thing. And so it was surprising, especially just played by somebody like Uma Thurman, who is such a strong actress, strong character, strong woman, to have her come in and play this role of this kind of off to the side wife is, and of course she's more intriguing than that, but I just mean this person who's kind of being handled by other folks was very surprising for me, or just disappointing maybe.
I was going to say that I think she's one of the most underrated characters in the film. I think when people think Pulp Fiction, they initially think Sam Jackson, John Travolta,
Really? I think of her a
Bruce
lot,
Willis.
actually.
She's on the cover, but I think that people don't really value how unique her character to me feels. It feels like she is someone who she's bored, but she can also do whatever, maybe not whatever she wants,
Right.
you know, to your point, but she's having these conversations. She says what she thinks. She has uncomfortable convos, like calls out the uncomfortable silence or comfortable
Yeah.
silence. And I think it's
But
kind of cool.
that's what I'm saying. That's why she doesn't feel like she would be a gangster guy's wife.
Okay,
is
so
what I'm saying.
you feel like she doesn't fit what the archetype typically
What the
looks
archetype
like.
typically is.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I get that.
Powerful, sure. In adjacent to power, sure. But outside of that, she is her personality
Yeah.
doesn't seem to fit that trope for sure.
Gotcha. And because it's a Tarantino film, we obviously get a good look at her feet. So there's that for.
Literally barefoot almost the entire movie.
So that's fetish reference number
I was
2
gonna
today.
say fetish on up, fetish on deck.
And then there's only, I know that there are, no disrespect to all the other actors and actresses in this thing, but the only other one that I have in my notes that I wanted to call out was Eric Stoltz as Lance, the drug
I
dealer.
literally have it as LOL. Eric Stoltz, LOL. I forgot he was in this.
The would-be Marty McFly.
For
And
real.
who then ended up just playing like drug dealers and pedophiles for like his next few roles of like
Creeps.
he
Right
didn't
and
get
left.
Marty McFly or like he got it and then had it taken away from him and then he just played creeps for the better part of a couple decades. But yeah, so I had that in my notes here. Did you have anything else to follow up on as far as the cast, the characters, anything like that?
No, I mean I think we've touched a lot on a lot of their stories. The one maybe little asterisk would be the Rosanna Arquette kind of. I wouldn't call it a cameo, but she's there. She's kind of in a scene. She makes a limited impact, but same. She's Eric Stoltz's wife.
The one with all the shit in her face.
With all the shit in her face. Hilarious. And it's just an interesting dynamic between the two of them. So I think she's notable for that reason. She doesn't get a lot of screen time, but she makes an impact in a short amount of time.
Yeah, we've got some fun cameos too, and we'll get to those in a second. But I guess, do you want to dig into the story a little bit?
I mean, I think we've touched on it quite a bit, but some of my favorite things I think are, again, the story is out of order on purpose. And I love how that's done. I think it feeds into the next section, the next thing really well, kind of throughout. And you get these narrative vignettes, that are, you're going to get a close look at this one, you're going to get a close look at this one, and close look at this one. But I love how it's structured and some of the classic Tarantino-isms. There's lots of classic things. To your point, there's obviously a foot fetish.
Yes.
Why not? There's also like the great trunk shot. There's, I mean, that again, I think that's like in every one of his movies almost.
For those that are not cinephiles, can you describe the shot that you're talking about?
So the trunk shot is, and again, it's not in his period pieces because can't do it, but it is an angled shot at the actors from the inside of a car trunk. And then also you sometimes get the shot of it in the trunk, but usually the initial shot is it looking up at the actors from the inside of the trunk. And it's kind of a classic and it's a fun one and it breaks things up a little. And you see it with the hitmen going in to do their job. It's Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta are going to get their guns out of the trunk, and it's like this great classic trunk shot.
Okay, yeah.
So
I remember one of those in Reservoir Dogs
Yeah.
of Michael Madsen opening up with the hostage in the trunk. I gotcha.
Dust Till Dawn has it. I mean, again, it's not directed by him,
written.
but it's in there as well. So it's kind of one of his moves, and I love that.
Perfect. Cool. As far as the vignettes themselves, or I guess the different narratives, if you had to pick a favorite, let's dig into that a little bit and talk about which one's your favorite. What's your favorite storyline in this?
Well, that's hard because again, we've said a couple times now about how cohesive it is and how well it flows together. I don't love the Butch storyline as much. Like if I had to trim the fat right away, that would probably be the first one that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, we talked last week, aka an hour ago, about Inglourious Basterds, and for me, how that second, or I guess it's like the third-ish story sort of drags a little bit
Yeah.
for me, and that's the same way I feel about this
About
one,
this one.
where it starts with that incredible monologue from Christopher Walken in a
I was
fantastic
going to say,
role.
what did you think about the Christopher Walken? Again, it's not really a cameo; it's a full-blown scene.
It's
but it
it's
feels
literally
like
just
a hard
him,
left, right? Like, what did you think about that?
When you first watch it, I'm just trying to take myself back to the first time I watched it and how out of nowhere that comes from. It's like, who is this kid that's watching this cartoon? And then
Yeah.
Christopher Walken comes in and talks about this watch, and then you don't find out again until 10 minutes later why the watch is so pivotal to the story, because that's the entire reason Butch is going to go back and have this interaction with Marcellus and some others. But yeah, the monologue itself, I think, is probably, aside from maybe the cowbell sketch on SNL, Christopher Walken's most well-known sort of role, or maybe the Fatboy Slim music video. But I think when you think Christopher Walken, this might be the first thing that comes to mind.
It might be, yeah. I mean, I have like 5 things that come to mind as you're saying that, but we're already talking about this one, so maybe so.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a classic. I love him and I love his appearances, but this did feel, again, like that portion of the story dragged a lot. I think my favorite, which is probably not anything original per se, is just the fucking wolf, though. Like, who doesn't want Harvey Keitel moments? Really, can we just have an entire Harvey Keitel moment throughout? I love Harvey Keitel. I love the wolf. And not least of which because that fucker gets across town in 10 minutes flat. And I am like,
beat the traffic.
Girl, same. That is me. If you have a 30-minute ETA, I'm going to get there in 10. And I was like, the wolf gets me.
Yeah.
I love it.
What I love about Tarantino characters is they don't feel over-explained ever. I feel like the wolf is intriguing because we know so little about him. He's just a professional that shows up and he's kind of a cleaner. He just gets rid of situations. He gets rid of problems. And I think that if you gave too much about that character, it would lose its mystique. And I think you see that a lot in Tarantino films. You see it a lot in Guy Ritchie, who I think oftentimes tries to impersonate. And I love Guy Ritchie, but I think he's clearly doing a British version at times of what Tarantino
he has
did
a very
first.
different aesthetic.
Both are great, but those types of characters where you get like, what is that guy's deal? But I don't want to know more about it, but I'm
think
fascinated.
It's because they're presented in a way where you have a lot of assumptions about them that work.
Yeah.
I don't need to dig into a lot of detail because my assumptions are probably right. They're written in such a way that you're like, this, and this must be true. You know, without having a lot of detail. Yeah. I think Harvey Keitel's really strong there. The corresponding interactions, of course, with John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson are, of course, great. You see them really defer to him more. Samuel L. Jackson's character is like, hey, this guy's the boss. Like, he fucking knows. Shut the fuck up and listen to him. Yeah. And John Travolta's like a little bit of the young rebel guy.
Doesn't like being bossed around.
And I relate to that a little bit too much. I'm like, you might be right, but I don't like how you're talking to me. So I respect it. I get it.
How many times have you told your boss at work, Mackenzie, a please would be nice?
Okay. I because the people I work with are going to listen to this, I feel like I should filter this out. No, my current boss is actually genuinely, all my bosses here have been incredible. Prior to this, a
please would be nice.
More than once I have said a please would be nice. A please would be nice. Maybe slightly different phrasing, but close.
Since we spoke about the wolf and that sort of segment of the story, which actually is the final segment of the story, it doesn't matter, spoilers abound. Let's talk a little bit about Tarantino putting himself in his movie as he is wont to do. And his dialogue is not aged well.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I am ready to rage.
Okay, let's hear it.
And I have been waiting to rage. Listen, is he an incredible writer? Check. Mm-hmm. Is he speaking and writing the way that he thinks his characters authentically would speak in not just this film but others? Yeah. Yes, check. Should that man be saying those words? No.
Yeah.
In my very firm opinion, no.
Yeah.
And you've had a Samuel L. Jackson and a Jamie Foxx defend his use of the N-word on repeated occasions. And again, Samuel L. Jackson in all of his films thinks like he's writing, and he said that explicitly as well. He was like, listen, he's writing the way that those people talk.
Yes.
So it is genuine and that is fine. And again, in a period piece, I also respect it. I also understand. In a Django Unchained, I understand why that's being used the way that it is and when it is being used. Yeah. But why a white guy in the 90s is saying the N-word over and over and over to a black man is really hard for me, both in the story and out of the story.
And I thought it was interesting that he's using this language in front of a black man who is also a gangster that could mess him up, but they are friends apparently, or at least connects. And I also thought it was interesting, I don't know if you caught this, but when they do the false cutaway, so we don't know if this is real, but I assume this is what they meant. But when they do the cutaway of Bonnie, his wife, entering the home, Bonnie is black. And it's like he's using this language despite having a black wife and a friend who is black. It was very off-putting.
Well, I think that is an accessibility bias sometimes where like I am adjacent to this community, so I'm allowed, am authorized.
Yeah.
And he is adjacent to that community, and he has said that in interviews, and so have other people have said that about him.
Right.
And he is adjacent or has access to these communities in real life, so he is sort of feels deputized to do these things and say these things and write these things. And I just don't think that's true.
Yeah.
You can have relationships with communities with whom you do not identify. I have plenty of them outside of black people, and I'm not going to say those words. It's not respectful. And again, this is the 90s. Like, I recognize that this was a slightly different time, but it wasn't that different a time. This is, to me, past the moment where you should be able to be saying these things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's always rough. And we talked about this when we did From Dusk Till Dawn, of terms and phrases like that being played for laughs. That I think is the other thing is, I remember 18-year-old me watching this and laughing at that dialogue of him saying like, oh, it's not dead storage in my garage.
Right.
And I was like cackling when I was, younger. And now you watch it back and you're just like, that's not humor. That's just something offensive that you're playing for laughs. But yeah, we can have this discussion all day about authenticity. So I get you.
Well, and again, I think that he wrote it the way that he felt it, and that's, and a lot of people don't have a problem with it. I personally do, and that's, and that's fine. He is a character also, like, just getting into the character, it's very distracting to his character. That's my thing, is like, I'm having a hard time paying attention to him and what he wants out of this situation and this scene because I'm distracted by that thing that he's saying instead of what he's doing, which what he's doing is kind of being a resource for them, but kind of making it really hard and being really angry. And again, wasting a lot of time. I love that when the wolf shows up, he also gets in line. Yeah. He also shuts the fuck up and starts to do his job too, which is make me some coffee, bitch. And I love that for us, and I love that for the wolf.
Wonderful. So, as we said, that's sort of the last segment. I think the piece that I think everyone always goes to the Jules and Vincent shooting up the apartment with the guys and the Ezekiel 25:17 or 25:13, whatever it is. That verse,
classic.
To me, on rewatches now, I always find the Vince and Mia story to be probably my favorite one.
Very
like, it holds my attention. I like the dialogue, the conversations that they're having. It's kind of like a thing, we talked about last episode of the weird Zoller and Shoshana relate dynamic of like, are they actually interested in each other in any capacity? With this, I'm wondering, like, is Mia, like, is she just like dangling bait out there for the Vince character, or is she just naive and having a good time? Like, how do you read this when you watch this back?
I think she knows.
Yeah.
I mean, same thing. I don't think she's the dumb housewife. You know what I mean? I don't think she's the dumb gangster's wife. I think she knows exactly who she is. I think she knows exactly what she's doing. I think everything that she wants to do, she wants to fucking do. Like you said, she's going to say what her opinion is. She's going to be who she is. She's going to, do the cocaine if she wants, She's going to go do the twist if she wants. Like, she's not a person who stops herself, I think, from doing the things that she wants to do, even if they're a little risky.
So do you think that she wants to walk this situation as close to the edge as possible before diving? Because when they dance their way back into the house at the end, or near the end of the story, and she said, is that what you'd call an uncomfortable silence? She's like, I don't know what you'd call that. And then he's going, he's convincing himself nothing's going to happen. I wonder what's going on in her head at that point of, where is this night going to end?
I think that there are two possible outcomes here that we all know. If you had to ask me what I think she wants to have happen, I think she wants the attention.
Yeah.
She wants the affection. Yeah. I get the impression her husband's not around a lot. She's not getting a lot of that. But I don't think that she would pull the trigger. Yeah. If I had to ask, just because she knows her husband so well. If her husband wasn't her husband and hadn't just thrown someone off a building, whatever, and isn't ready to, kill people right and left, then she probably would, I think, do the thing. She's interested in this guy. She's had a good time.
Is that the official name for it on this show? The Thing?
The Thing.
It's very PG
the thing.
for a show where we're saying fuck and talking about feet fetishes. We'll
Would
just
she
call
fuck
sex
the guy? The
thing.
answer is
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Let me just get right down to it. Yes, I think she would, because she's interested in him. They have chemistry. I think that part is real.
Okay.
And I think she's playing with fire, and she knows it. And I think she would pull back just before getting burned.
Right. Yeah. Walk to the edge of the cliff. Don't jump. It's when you said the note about her husband not being very attentive, I think I just pieced together, and correct me if I'm wrong, but literally aren't they only in one scene together? And it's just when Butch has sort of refused to throw the fight and they show them in the locker room.
Yeah.
That's the only scene that Mia and Marcellus share, right?
I think so.
And then, there's multiple times that we see Marcellus, he's on vacation.
He's on vacation.
But there's another woman there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I honestly don't remember. I didn't read it as she's like a waitress or anything like that. I think it's like his escort or something like that. So yeah, I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I think she would make that jump. And I think, before we wrap, I think we've, gone over a lot of the great high points and how beautifully done this film is. I do want to touch on one thing that I think is really important, is that Marcellus's character and what he goes through, what he goes through, that is a groundbreaking, horrifying experience in all the ways, for film, for film at this time, for discussions around these topics, and trigger warning, truly, pause, don't listen if you don't want to keep listening. There's a man here who gets raped. I mean, you can't get around that by two men who are, sadly, but also doesn't excuse their behavior, obviously self-loathing men who have, are either gay or at least, have gay tendencies, whatever it is, interest, and they are self-loathing enough, and they have this toxic masculinity, and they get their hands on him as a result of Butch's and his conflict. Yeah. And completely by chance, they end up in this guy's basement, and, they end up raping Marcellus first. And this is really, it's a tough topic for all the reasons. On this podcast, we're trying to laugh, right? We're trying to have a good time. This is fucking rough.
I had a bunch of punchlines ready, and now I'm not going to say any of them because I'm down in the dumps.
But we also can't, I feel like, again, we owe it to not just the film and the work that's being done here, but to these characters and to the time and to the real people that this probably represented also as well, to talk about it, which is, this was not a topic that was done in films. This was not something that you saw a lot of, especially not only rape in general, but man on man rape, people who are gay being villainized in this way. There's all kinds of things happening here that are incredibly complicated and can't be overlooked. And again, I'm not going to get into the nuance and the pain of all of that, but what I will say is that this is a very challenging, intense topic for someone to take on for their second film, and to put it in a film at this time and in this way, and address it in a way that brings out the humanity in people, because there's this horrible act of violence happening against Marcellus, who is this strong, gangster guy that everyone's afraid of. Not these two guys, but everyone else is afraid of them. And they don't know what's coming for them if this guy gets out, if this guy gets free, right?
Right.
But also Butch doesn't know that he's gonna get free. He doesn't know that he's gonna survive this, and he can't just leave him there.
Yeah. And
he saves him, and he doesn't have to. He could just break free. He knows that this guy, if he helps save this guy has no onus to save him, to spare him, whatever.
And that is, every time I rewatch, I keep an eye on this, and I look for a reaction, because when Butch comes downstairs with the sword, he kills the first guy, and then he's sort of messing with Zed. He's like, oh, go get your gun. He's got him, at sword point. And then you hear the shotgun cock behind him, and it's like, is he about to shoot Butch right now?
Right.
Because it's like, he's got the gun. He could easily just kill both of them. And thankfully, that's not how it plays out. And it's sort of, again, some of it, the first time you watch it, is played for laughs, of him saying like, hey, are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm not a fucking K.
Yeah.
And it's like, when I saw that at 18, I thought that was hilarious. But now I'm like, dude, that's how he would react, because it's like,
but also the fact that it's a simple line, but the fact that he even says, no, I'm not fucking okay, is a real reaction that you don't see in these situations, and especially from a man in front of another man. But this barrier has been broken down. Between these two guys who were enemies 20 minutes ago are now allies, and not just allies, they have seen the seemingly the worst possible thing that they could see happen to one another in this situation, and they're now protective of that bond in the worst way, right?
Of like,
this
yeah,
horrible
yeah.
bond has happened, and we're gonna respect each other and take care of each other now.
Yeah.
And he lets him go.
Yeah.
And I think it's a huge moment for the film that is one of the more impactful moments for me now on a second, third, fourth, fifth watch that maybe didn't resonate back then as much as it should. I think it's really powerful. I think it's really brave.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I believe that this came out the same year as Shawshank, right?
It's close. I think so.
I think they might have been nominated for Best Picture like the same year.
Yeah, it is.
And it's interesting that you say, hey, during this time, this wasn't, but two films came out that same year that involved man-on-man, sexual violence. And, both are widely regarded as incredible pictures to this day. So interesting takeaway there. I do want to hard pivot a little bit.
Fine.
And I appreciate everything
we
that you
all
shared.
need to recover from that. So go ahead. What's
So
next?
the one thing that this movie has that Inglourious Bastards does not have is a GIMP. And I found that very interesting. I was like, man, why is this guy not in every movie? And I just, wanted to pivot a little bit to that. What were your thoughts the first time you saw this and they took a person out of that box and just sort of strung him up? Because that's another topic of sexual taboo that wasn't really, on film to this point.
Yeah, to be honest, I guess I don't know when I first watched it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I don't know what the reaction was. I guess I was just ready for it on the later watches, so it didn't really, register much to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, very taboo at the time. Again, this is a very groundbreaking film in a lot of ways. But one of the things I did want to touch on is that unlike Inglourious Bastards, it was kind of a slow burn, at least initially. It did break its box office budget, by, umpteen times. I'm not saying that. But I think it is one of those that is regarded as a cult classic for a reason. It took a while to really appreciate and understand. And I think this is early Tarantino work that we don't quite yet know his style. And also this is very different from Reservoir Dogs. Yeah. So you don't quite know what to expect from this story. And it is a seemingly pretty, uneventful but eventful kind of story. These are real world situations, I guess. More like real life situations that you get these vignettes to. And so you don't know what to expect from this style, but it turns out to touch on some really interesting topics.
Yeah, when you hear the term seedy underbelly, I feel like that term gets thrown around a lot with sort of gangster films and things like that. But the way that I interpret that is you're introducing, the common American or worldwide public to situations that probably do happen, in these environments with these types of, characters or real life people. And so, yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that. I wanted to touch on a couple things visually that I thought were pretty cool as far as cinematography. You mentioned the trunk shot earlier. One of my favorite shots in the film is when Butch goes back to his apartment to get the watch and he, it's empty. He's like, nobody's in there. He grabs his watch. He makes himself a Pop-Tart. And then you see his eyes look down and he sees something on the counter, but they don't show what he's looking at.
Yeah.
And then he does this double take of looking around the apartment. I'm just whipping my head. You guys can't see that. But yeah, he does this double take of looking around of what is going on?
It looked exactly like him in the movie, in case you were curious.
Thank you. And then eventually, it slowly pans down 10 seconds later and shows us the big-ass gun.
Right.
And I thought that shot was really cool because seeing him react to something but not knowing what he's reacting to was pretty cool.
I do love that shot. I do think that's really creative. But something's wrong, obviously. Someone's there.
Yeah.
But it's still a question mark.
Yeah. We've got a couple other sort of the classic Tarantino long shots that I dig. I like the entrance into Jack Rabbit Slim's, the 50s or 60s themed bar, where they're walking through there and it's sort of a one shot.
Which also, I love that fucking bar. I would totally go hang there. I love the music. I love the cars. I love the booths are cars. Your girl loves cars, and I geek out. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, you get a fun cameo from Steve Buscemi in there as well. Ironically, playing a waiter after he said in Reservoir Dogs that he doesn't tip. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then John Travolta's like, he's not much of a waiter. Go figure.
Yeah, not going to get a tip, bitch.
And then actually, I think the longest shot in the entire film is the one where Jules and Vincent are getting on the elevator in the initial sequence and then riding up to the apartment, and then they walk down the hallway and have a whole dialogue down there and then come back down the hallway to the door. I think that scene runs 2.5, 3 minutes almost, and it's a one shot, which is pretty cool.
I love a good long shot. I mean, we're not going to take a hard left turn, but there are a couple films that really stand out for me for long shots too, and that is a really impressive one. I really like it. So I mean, he does some great shots here, he does some great storytelling here, and I love that it has gained the following that it has over the course of its life. And I think that it's a standout Tarantino flick. I don't know if it's my favorite though, so that's my question to you. I mean, I know we're going to keep talking about it, but this all, the premise was what's maybe the best of these two, or what's the best of his films? Is this like, what would you rate this, Pulp Fiction? You rated Inglourious Basterds pretty highly, as a reminder.
Yeah, I said Inglourious was probably a 9.8 for me.
Yeah.
This would probably be a 10. I mean, if I took off any points at all, I do think the Butch sequence goes on a little long, because not only do you have...
He doesn't like dialogue and stories, and he doesn't have
just
patience for them.
Transformers. Just give me Transformers in every movie. Why is this so difficult? But no, you get the Christopher Walken monologue, which is followed by Butch in the cab, and you get that long dialogue sequence. Yeah. Then he gets back to his hotel room, and you get a long dialogue sequence.
You don't like people talking, okay?
Just that part drags. That is the only part, and separately, those conversations are all fascinating, but all of those in a row without sort of an action beat is what sort of throws me in that sequence. So maybe a 9.9. But I do like that. I will rewatch Pulp Fiction.
That's higher than Inglourious Basterds, though.
That's fair.
I thought you were the nice judge.
Yeah, but a 9.8 and a 9.9 is pretty nice. I feel like those are fair ratings. And yeah, I think I would, if you were to ask me, hey, what do you want to watch tonight? It would be Pulp Fiction more often than Inglourious Basterds. I love both.
That's a very great question, because I think you can rate something highly and be like, I can't ever watch it again. You know what I mean? Not these particularly, but I just mean movies in general. Mm-hmm. There are things you can rate highly and be like, "It was a beautiful film. I'm never." But I never want to sit through that. I never want to sit through it again. Yeah. No, I totally.
How about you? Rating?
I think I lean Inglourious Basterds on this one for a lot of reasons. I love the Shoshana shot. I didn't get to talk about this actually. I realized as we were talking that I did not mention this. The Shoshana shot of not the marquee, of the fire and her laughing on the screen. Just so classic, beautiful. And I just love the story. I love the vengeance for her. I love the way that it's done. I love the kind of comeuppance for Christoph. So I lean a little bit more Inglourious Basterds in this way, and I gave them like what? I think you
gave them an 8.
8. Yeah, I would say an 8. Just again, I'm a dick. I don't give anybody a 10.
You don't have a single movie in your collection that's a 10 to you?
No, that's not true, and that's a whole other conversation.
Okay, all right.
I don't give a lot of people 10s, is what I should say. Asterisk. Okay. I don't give a lot of people 10s. They're very.
Gotta be careful with our hyperbole. This is recorded. People can come back to this.
It's on record. People can hold me to this later. Yeah. No, there's only a couple, is what I would say, that I consider a 10. Everybody else starts at a 9 for me. Inglourious Basterds, I think again I would land at like an 8, 8.5. This I think is probably like an 8. Yeah. Like a solid 8. They're kind of tied, but again, if I had to edge one out, it would be Inglourious Basterds. That'd be the one I would want to rewatch more.
Yeah.
But I do really enjoy this movie. I love watching it. I think it's a great film.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels between the two. They're 15 years apart. But you still get your Tarantino-isms. You get your tense, we talked about this last week, your tense diner scenes or table-like scenes of people having tough conversations across the table from each other.
I love that it's dialogue heavy. We'll talk more about this in future episodes, but I respect any filmmaking that isn't just about effects. That you are telling a story and you're writing it well, and you just can't argue that it wasn't written well. I mean, it won for best screenplay for a reason.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's a very well written work, and we'll see more of them over the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
We're gonna do a couple more. So what are we doing? We're gonna do Hateful Eight.
We're going to do Hateful Eight because, as we said last week, it's probably the most divisive. I know a lot of folks who saw that once and really did not like it.
Which, I have not heard this information. I'm going to have to recon between now and then because I don't understand that.
I've heard the word boring thrown around and too long. And, see, so that's why we're going to talk about it. I'm
so upset. Okay. No, it's very divisive. I love that. Okay, but we do need a fourth. So, again, hit us with your suggestions for our last Tarantino flick. What's gonna take us out for the month?
What's going to get you to listen? You got to come back for a fourth week. So what do you most want to
content? You tell us.
I usually just bribe people with money, but that's difficult in the podcast game. That would get expensive real quick.
We're real broke already. This already costs us more to make.
Can I make 2 final real quick notes about Pulp Fiction just to wrap us up? Number 1, there is a misconception that Vanilla Coke being referenced in this was sort of a prediction. Like, it was because Vanilla Coke didn't exist until like 5 or 10 years later. Vanilla Coke became a thing you could buy in bottles. But the term Vanilla Coke has been around since like the 1940s. Like, you could
a soda fountain, you could always add
so you
syrup.
just put vanilla in it. So that's why it's a themed diner. That's why they have Vanilla Coke. So just clarifying that. And then the last thing I wanted to say is the $5 shake. He talks about how expensive it is. With today's inflation, that doesn't seem so fucking bad. $5 milkshake, please.
I was going to make this point, is that my favorite movie theater, of which I am a top brass member, thank you very much, Alamo Draft House, shout out, sponsor us. It had a $5 milkshake on their menu for the longest time. Of course, as a reference to this, they still have the Royale with cheese on their menu as a reference to Pulp Fiction. And that is not a $5 milkshake anymore, and it hasn't been for quite some fucking time. And same thing, inflation took that one out. But that was such a great film reference on a menu, and now it's gone. So.
And actually, speaking of film references, the last thing that I will say about this movie was that I did not know that the rapper Machine Gun Kelly was named after a motion picture. But there is a poster in Jack Rabbit Slim's.
Oh, you mean his given birth name, Machine Gun Kelly?
Yeah, Machine Gun Kelly Johnson.
Cool.
There's a poster in Jack Rabbit Slim's of the film Machine Gun Kelly. And I was like, is that a real movie? And then I IMDb'd it. Yep, real film. And I did not know.
Machine Gun Kelly was?
Nope.
Oh, we can have a whole talk about that.
Okay.
All right. Well, for another one, for another future state. But for now, thanks for hanging with us and listening to us talk all things Tarantino. Come back for a couple more.
Tarantino-vember rolls on.
Tarantino-vember. So for now, though, go have a drink and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers.